Hello and welcome to Daddy Issues. This is Dave, your co-host. It finally happened, everybody. I always make two recordings of this podcast, one on my fancy, very cheap microphone and a backup recording on my mobile phone. And I've always done that for all of our recordings on Daddy Issues, just on the off chance that something would happen to my primary recording and I'd need to use the backup. It's finally happened. Something has corrupted my primary recording for this episode, so I've had to use my dodgy phone recording instead. I do apologise that the sound recording will not be quite as good as you've come to expect, and you will be able to hear an odd kind of tickly rumbling sound in the background, which was my laptop, which is very old, just about holding together, but I hope that doesn't diminish your enjoyment of this episode, which I will seamlessly cut to now.
Yeehaw, and welcome to Daddy Issues, the podcast. Now, I'm wearing a cowboy hat, alright?
That's the only way that makes sense.
Yeah, and as everyone listening to this podcast can clearly see, I'm wearing a podcast hat. This is my new podcast hat. Now. It is new. It's weird, because it's really hot in here, so the hat smells like my hair. This is not going to be the introduction to the episode.
I think it is.
I take it back. God,
we're live,
damn
baby.
It. Oh no. Well, this is the podcast where we talk about father and son relationships in popular culture. My name's Dominic Archer, and with me, as always, the co-host with the mo-host. I must have made that joke before. Surely.
I love it.
If I didn't make that joke before, I must have heard it on something else.
I think you need to give yourself more credit. Like, there was another episode where we talked about, I think it was the Austin Powers episode, where you had a really cool idea and then you found out later on that you'd subconsciously stolen it from another podcast. But no, I believe that this is all you. This is all Dom. 100%. I was going to say Cornish beef, but you're not Cornish.
Somerset cider, which I am currently drinking. While we are recording, you can tell that I'm from Somerset because my cider even has Glastonbury Tor on it. So
doesn't that just make you sick? You can't even get out of Somerset with your alcoholic beverages.
You know what I found? I'm currently drinking Thatcher's Gold, of course, because I'm
sponsor.
Yes, sponsors of this episode, and like every rugby club in the southwest of England. I found it in Moscow, and a can in the UK is like £1.20 or something like that. And I found it when I was in Moscow, an obscure food market. They happened to have an import store full of like American candy, and then Somerset cider. I was like, oh my god, this is the best day of my life. And my ex-girlfriend, this is probably why she broke up with me, because I would become so obsessed over the fact that there is cider in this one shop. It's like, you don't get it, I would say.
How many rubles did that cost you?
Oh, like 400 rubles.
I have no idea of the conversion rate, so is that a lot? I imagine it's more than you would pay here for the import tax and everything.
Yeah, it's about £4. Yeah, four or 5
for a can
quid.
Of cider.
Yeah, I know.
How many
You're
did
as
you buy?
disgusting. Are you going to break up with me right now? Because I'm pretty sure that's what she did. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that yet, but I get the feeling we're going to get to it in this episode because we're back to Neon Genesis Evangelion, and boy, this is episode 23 and 24. Tears, Ray 3. The Last Cometh, the beginning and the end, or Knocking on Heaven's Door. And as we've done with previous ones of this, today, this current session, we're just going to record about tears, so we can kind of like go in depth on the episode, and then in a couple of days we'll talk about episode 24. So just in case there's some weird chopping and changing, that's why. I'm interjecting, Dave, in the middle of our introduction, because we've just got to the end of the episode, and our plan was to talk about Tears and The Last Cometh. But we've been speaking for a long time, and we have not gotten on to The Last Cometh, because there's just so much to speak about in Tears. It's so strong that we've just focused on it for ages, so we're going to postpone it. So if you come here specifically for episode 24, The Last Cometh, boy, are you going to have to wait.
Apologies, but this is, this is quality content.
get ready for some in-depth discussion of clinical depression.
Boom.
It hasn't let up on the depressing factor yet, has it, Dave?
No, and it keeps that momentum of depression going with the very first scene of this episode. Yeah, if you're gonna run a marathon, you can't stop part way. You've got to keep that momentum.
Yes. Much like the ship in Apollo 13 falling back down to Earth in a flaming rubble.
But you'll remember, Dom, I've not seen Apollo 13, so I can't back you up on this.
Oh, well, I won't tell you if they survive or not then. So that when you do eventually watch Apollo 13, there'll be some suspense.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. That's right. No spoilers for Apollo 13 based on a historical space mission from over 40 years ago. But, God, these episodes are so good, but it gets to a point where it's tough to watch. And Tears is a perfect example of that. Because by the time I get to the end of Tears, I'm literally in tears again. But this is interesting for us because up until now, we've been recording on the episodes that you've seen. Because I've seen the show before, but you hadn't watched it before we started recording. But now, you have actually finished the entire series, and we're going back to record. So, for the first time in our recording history of Neon Genesis Evangelion, I can't say to you, what do you reckon's going to happen next? Because
that might have been one of the reasons why I decided to finish it now. Because you're forcing me to make predictions that I was uncomfortable sticking my neck out with.
Okay. Well, this one is important because in the previous episode, I said to you, what do you think's going on with Rei? And you were like, oh, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm just going to wait and see. And now we've seen it. You know the full revelation of Rei, who she is, what's going on. This episode is called Rei 3, which we thought maybe was just because this was the third episode to focus on her after episodes Rei 1 and Rei 2. But bitch! It's not just for that.
No, levels, man. There's levels to this.
Yeah. Before we jump into the plot of the story, how did you feel about the Rei revelation that kind of comes at the end?
It wasn't shocking, I suppose. It didn't come out of left field, and it kind of just dolly stepped its way towards it, and then to the point where I was like, yeah, I guess. But then right before the big revelation at the very end, they drop a line of dialogue which kind of gives it away before the big visual revelation. So after that line of dialogue, I was like, okay, yeah, I know what she's talking about, and that's kind of what I was expecting. So which is a weird way of doing a big reveal, because when we get to the end of the episode and the big visual reveal, it's only Shinji and Masato who are getting this information completely fresh. Or even Masato probably knew. She's not completely shocked. It's Shinji whose world is kind of thrown for a loop because of it. Whereas we, as the audience, should have been picking up on a lot of this stuff as it goes on. And then, one of the main characters basically tells you what's happening before we even get there.
Well, I love the fact that you have very much not revealed anything with that description.
It was very
yes, as we've said before, if you're for some reason on episode 6 of our Neon Genesis Evangelion podcast and you haven't listened or watched the show up until now, what are you doing here, Dad?
Well, now he doesn't have to watch it. Now he can just listen to us talk about it, and he knows what happened.
Yeah, that's a real fucked way to enjoy this show, let me tell you. But let's get into Tears, because unlike previous episodes, the end run, which is why we kind of wanted to dive into these in more detail, the end run is very much one after the other. Like earlier episodes, sometimes there's kind of months between each episode, and an episode ends, and then it can feel like, and then a couple of weeks go by, and then an angel attacks.
Then an angel attacks.
Yeah. Whereas with these ones from 21 to 26, it feels like on Monday, Asuka fucks up. On Tuesday, Asuka spirals into depression. On Thursday, Asuka, and it's kind of... it feels really intense Like the tension is building and time is slowing down as we watch. And it's some crazy stuff. So we open with everyone at their lowest point in this episode, right? Masato is listening to the voice message from her dead boyfriend again. Shinji is dying out for human connection and can't get it because Misato's crying. Shinji's desperate for someone to love him, but the only person to love him is the penguin. And when he wants to try and reach out to Asuka again, she's even left the house.
Yeah, she's busy playing Sega at her friend's house.
Yeah, I thought that was a really...
Sega.
Whoa, that's some nostalgia. Isn't it interesting that in 1995 that they thought that in 20 years' time that Sega would be the dominant gaming platform?
Yeah, and apparently they also make TVs. I don't know if you noticed that, but the Sega logo is on the frame of the telly. That's strange, but okay.
Do you know what? I noticed that because I wanted to point that out to you. So there you go. We are synchronized like Ava pilots. Whoa. Yeah, I thought that scene was really interesting with Asuka at the house. So she's at the class rep's house, and the class rep says like, "Oh, she won't go to school. She won't go home. She just sits here and plays video games." Then they go to bed, and Asuka actually opens up to somebody and says about how she failed, and
she actually apologizes to the class rep as well, which I don't think we've heard her say "I'm sorry" once since this whole series.
Yeah, what did you make of this scene? The scene is two scenes really. One where she's playing, and then she says, "Let's go to bed," and then there's a bit just after where they're talking in bed like that.
Yeah, this was the first kind of step on a mending trail with me and Asuka.
Yeah, she's repairing your relationship.
She's trying to repair a relationship, and she's being nice, and she's being considerate, and she's opening herself up and having a meaningful conversation with someone that she trusts. So yeah, I thought it was nice that she is going through this, but then I for the first time I felt sorry for her because she just seems so sad. and not projecting and not translating that sadness into anger or into sort of vitriolic kind of attitude that she sprays on anyone who's around her. She's actually kind of internalizing it a bit more, and
but she ends the scene by crying.
Yeah,
she curls up into a fetal position and cries next to her friend. It's really interesting because she's facing away from her friend, right? So she's got her back to her. She doesn't want to show that weakness. She doesn't ask for a hug, or the friend doesn't turn around to give her a hug or something like that. But there's a couple of bits that are really meaningful in that scene. The first one is Asuka says, I'm a failure and I hate myself. And her friend says, your friend says, you can do whatever you want and I'm here to support you because I think you did a great job.
Yeah.
But then Asuka starts crying and curls up. And that's really interesting because it made me think, why did she cry? Does she cry because someone has finally said something nice to her? Or does she cry because someone said something nice, but it's a false platitude? Right? Asuka feels like she's failed, and the only thing her friend can do is try to say, no, Asuka, no, you didn't. It's not that you failed. I think you did really well. But we know that she got decapitated in episode 19, sorry. She was decapitated and her head was thrown through another building. And she's lost it, she was hit by that psychic angel beam that sang hallelujah at her. She's gone, right? She's gone. And the only thing her friend can say is, there. Right? I think you did a good job. And I'm interested in how you see it. How do you see her emotional state in that moment?
Yeah, again I felt it was very sincere and touching. Asuka's sort of emotional journey through that conversation, but the class rep, her friend, it was a bit of a platitude, but I didn't see it as false. If anything, I saw it as being more true because it was completely removed from Asuka's normal world of within Nerve, where she's either praised for doing a good job piloting or in her synchronization tests, or she's not, and that's the only kind of validation and reinforcement that she gets, positive or negative. Whereas here she is just lying with a friend, and she just says something nice. She's just being nice because she wants to be nice, and she's a nice person, which is something that Asuka's not had any kind of anything from anyone. And that, if anything, is more of a human connection than what she's had before, which is just based like a meritocracy based reward system. So if anything, I felt that whole thing was really sincere. And when Asuka starts to cry, I kind of felt like a bit of sympathy and a bit of empathy for when you finally allow yourself or allow somebody else in, and you finally speak on a truth, and when you're in your most vulnerable place. And sometimes when you open those floodgates, the waterworks come. And it reminded me of any kind of famous like therapy scene where the typically walled off client who's not really revealed anything and is very much a closed book finally, like think about Good Will Hunting, when he finally opens up and you finally take those walls down, any kind of any kind of measurement of how much emotion you can let out, is that power is gone, and it just all comes.
Yeah, I thought one of the things that really vibed with me in this scene is something more that we get in the movie The End of Evangelion, which I just noticed is also on Netflix, which is great because it means that we will eventually be able to watch it one day in the future. But one of the things I thought that was really interesting is in The End of Evangelion, the movie spent a lot of time critiquing the audience, essentially. Because one of the things we've said about Neon Genesis is how it places such an importance on human connection and on learning to face your trauma and to be introspective and not to fall into escapism. And one of the big critiques of the movie that the creator had themselves was, we're making this movie because the audience were unhappy with the finale of the show, which is all about forget escapism, make yourself a better person, and open up to people. And then, so in the end, they make a movie that's like, alright, we're going to have a bunch of fucking robots fighting each other. And we're doing this because you, the audience, missed the point. And what you wanted was giant fucking robots. Right? And for me, this moment where Asuka doesn't deal with her emotions, she sits there all day and just plays games. She doesn't go to school. She doesn't go home. She's been through such trauma, but rather than trying to deal with it, she jumps into the games console.
Escapism, yeah. But do you have any...
Yeah.
I could say that some of my trickiest emotional periods in my life, I did the very same thing. I couldn't deal with, for example, the end of a relationship years ago, and to avoid any kind of introspection or analysis, to pick up a games console and don't put it down, because if you put it down, you're going to have to start thinking about how you're feeling. And yeah, I was not ready to deal with that, so I very much drowned myself in escapism at that point too. So again, another moment where I started to actually be able to empathise with her.
Yeah, but that was exactly what I did the last year during coronavirus, which was a big reason probably of why my relationship didn't go so well. Because rather than successfully being able to reach out for a human connection with my ex-girlfriend who I was living with, I spent as much of my time as I could playing games and watching shows like Neon Genesis Evangelion, so I didn't have to deal with the fact that we were in the middle of a fucking pandemic and my relationship was falling apart in front of my eyes, right? And in that way, I missed the point of this show. I actually wrote something about this the other day. I don't think I want to read it out necessarily, because it's kind of sad. But I'm going to find it. I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it to myself and see if it's as sad as I remember it being. But as we've been watching Neon Genesis Evangelion again, I've had those kinds of flashbacks in my head to when I watched it for the first time. When I watched it as escapism, right, for that exact reason. And by the end of the show, I'd realised the point of the show is don't fall into the trap of escapism. So basically, I wrote this thing. It's kind of like a poem or a kind of thing the other day. That's kind of the point of it is watching it again now. Why did I not realise the meaning of the show that's all about finding that human connection and leaving escapism behind? Why did I not close my laptop, go upstairs and mend the human connection that was damaged? Right? How did I watch it and go, I see the point of this show is, and then not do it? Right? And that's a very human, because at the point I wasn't happy, she wasn't happy, maybe I didn't want to mend it. But in trying to do so, maybe there would have been a new path that opened up. And that's a really big point for me that I've seen rewatching these final bits again, is it's easy to say to people, just reach out and talk. But it's really fucking difficult when you're in that moment.
Yeah.
Right? To have the conscious thought. And I see that especially in the relationships between Masato, Shinji, and Asuka. All of those times where the three of them could just say one sentence and the walls would be broken down. But they don't think to do it, or they can't do it, and it's so human that I'm watching it going, oh my god, this is me. This is me when I was watching it last year. Right? And like, why did it, I saw myself in it but didn't learn their lessons. And yeah, it's something I want to bring up when we talk about father and son relationships, because I had exactly one of these after our last recording. After our last recording, I messaged you to be like, I have to get out of this fucking house. And we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that later on in terms of daddy issues stuff. Okay. So the Asuka scene ends. We cut to our doctor. What's her name? You always remember her name.
Ritsuko. Dr. Akagi.
Ritsuko. Yes, she is smoking heavily, and she gets a call from her grandmother to say that her cats have died. We've heard about her cats in previous episodes, where Masato has said, you never got into a relationship, you're just a lonely woman who likes to live with her cats. And now her cat has died. She moved her cat to her grandmother's house, and her grandmother's called her to say that her cat has died, and she has lost that one connection. She never made human connections other than her mother, but the one connection she did have with her cat is now dead.
Yeah, but she's never expounded much on how much she loved this cat, or her cat as her best friend or whatever. It's just we know she has a cat, and we know she doesn't really get on with people that well. And then when she finds out that her cat has died, she has no emotional response. She's just like, I think she literally says, oh, so I guess that cat's dead.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's sad, but she's a big focus on this episode anyway. We see the Spear of Longinus orbiting the moon after Ray fucking threw it to the moon last episode. That's something that happened.
That's one of my favourite moments of this show, actually. I loved it. I don't know why, I just thought it was really cool. I can't think of a better word for it than cool. It's just fucking cool.
Yeah, well, that's why they ended up making all these extra movies, was because the mistake they made, right? The point for the creator was it's not about giant robots, right? It's about introspection and depression and human emotions and learning to love each other. But then he also included such awesome stuff with robots and aliens. It's like, if you don't want people to enjoy the robot stuff, then make worse robot stuff. You can't make it so good and then be sad when people want to see it, you know?
Yeah.
But then we see Akari Commander Akari is having his conversation with Seal, and they're all singing "Kiss from a Rose." And I'm gonna
in the round.
yeah, they're all kind of doing it one after the other.
That'd be great. They're harmonising. They're pitch perfect. They're like a barbershop. How many of them are? Like 8?
An octet. Yeah, whatever it would be.
A barbershop octet. Or 2 competing quartets.
Oh.
It's like a spin-off from that, what's that fucking Glee kind of movie? Pitch Perfect. It's like juggling Glee clubs. That
you know what? I've never watched Pitch Perfect, but I want to see a version of it back set against the apocalypse with giant robots. If they're going to do it, that's what I want to see.
I'd watch it then, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So, what is famed pop R&B singer Seal telling Commander Akari in this moment, because they're not happy with him.
No, I can't remember what they're telling her. I know that when their call ends, Akari has to pop out. He gets a phone call from Fuyutsuki, and he's like, "Yo, Gendo, my man, guess what?
G-Dog. Yeah.
G-Dog, big G.
Gendo.
This never happens, but an angel's attacking. Lol. You better come sort it out."
All our characters are at their lowest point. And guess what?
Guess what? An angel attacks. So Akari's like, "Read you loud and clear, F-dog. I'll be right there. Let me just hang up on these fogies, these squares, man."
Yeah, these
and
squares.
Like, aren't they rectangles? And Akari's like, "Shut up, man. I'm being cool, man." Anyway, he drops out of the conference with Seal, and Seal are like, "Oh, Akari, we just what?"
Sorry, I'm doing the Kiss from the Rose introduction again. keep going.
You're just too easily distractible. Seal want to get rid of Akari because he basically just keeps doing whatever the fuck he wants. And not doing what he's told. And then he fucking drops out of the teams meeting.
Yeah. This is the thing with Akari, is that from the very beginning of this series, every time we see Seal and this group of like eight people, every single time they say, "We're really going to have to do something about Akari."
And then nothing happens.
And then they never do anything.
They kidnapped his mate, Fuyutsuki, and then they were like, "This will show him." Why? Like, they just gave him back. Oh no, Akagi breaks him out, doesn't he? And why not actually do something to Akari instead of just floating around and shaking a finger at a non-visible finger, because they're sound only in these conferences. They've gone from being sat around a table together, which is holographic or something, I don't know, because they seem to just blip out when they're done, like S.H.I.E.L.D. From Captain America or Winter Soldier. But now they've only ever appeared as these rectangles with their designated numbers saying sound only. So for some reason they don't really want to look at him anymore, or they don't want to be seen anymore. I don't know why. Weird change.
No, I'm not sure. Probably an animation thing, I would imagine. Because before they reused a lot of the animation. But as the show went on and there were more things like the Spear of Longinus turning into a giant javelin that got thrown to the moon, they were probably like, "Oh, we can't use that animation again, but we don't have the money or the time, so we're going to make them big fucking squares." Yeah. But they're basically, once again, they're making the point of, we should really do something about Gendo Akari. Again, like, guys, seriously, how many times do we have to reuse the same animation where you say how dangerous Akari is? Anyway, so Akari goes off because another angel has appeared. This is one of my favourite angels. What does this angel look like, Dave?
It's like it's like a giant ring. Floaty, glowy, white ring.
What do you think it really looks like? Because that is a good description.
Oh well, when you see it in close range, it looks like strands of DNA, like a coil, like pasta, like fusilli pasta.
Yeah, I thought.
Can we pause for dinner?
Yeah. Wait a minute, I've got curry for dinner and I need to get to it. Yeah, I thought it looks like DNA, and what's this up my wazoo? Religious imagery? How did you get up there?
Because it also looks like a halo.
It looks like a halo, Dave. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, it's a giant floating halo in the shape of DNA strands. And what was that coming out of your wazoo there?
You don't want to know. It's the worst kind of imagery.
To be honest, it was either lunch or religious imagery, and there's so much of both, I can't tell which was which.
I can't tell anymore. They both smell bad.
But I thought this angel was fucking awesome. The thing with this show is they keep making these giant villains that aren't really the villains, but they're just so amazing. it starts off being like a giant halo and then kind of turns into more like a, how would you describe it, like a snake, I guess?
Yeah, like a wormy, whippy kind of thing. Yeah. It just breaks, the ring just breaks and it becomes one long piece that wiggles around through the air and attacks them.
Yeah. Yeah, almost like you would see like a Chinese dragon or something like that.
Yeah, the way it moves.
You know the way that it moves? Yeah.
Yeah, like a Gyarados.
Yeah, like a Gyarados. Yes. Yes. Do you know one of the things about Gyarados that really annoys me? And it's the same with Charizard.
Okay.
They're not dragon types.
Yeah. Yeah.
That pisses me off because both of them are literally dragons, but they're not dragon types. Like, you're going to tell me that Dragonite, that big, puffy, carved out motherfucker, is a dragon.
Charizard.
Yeah, but Charizard is not a dragon. And then could you make the excuse, well, it is literally... Oh yeah, but if you play X and Y, if you play either X or Y, one of the, like, super forms is a dragon type. Fuck off. I don't have time for that. Right, doesn't count.
I'll go in with you on the Gyarados thing. That should definitely be a water/dragon type because it is literally a Chinese water dragon. And then, I don't know, Charizard, it's like a very lizard kind of based sprite, so I guess you could just be like a winged lizard, but then it breathes fire.
What do you call a winged lizard that breathes fire, Dave?
Yeah, I don't know. There's probably a word for it. What was that movie with Christian Bale? And they're all floating around. There's like post-apocalyptic London, and Matthew McConaughey's there, but he's really skinny and he's got a bald head and a beard. It's Reign of Fire.
Empire of the Sun.
Facetious.
Empire of the Sun.
Yeah.
No, that's the one where he's a POW in World War II.
Yeah, and he's like 13 years old.
Yeah, that's a good movie. Good movie, good book.
Is there a book as well? I didn't know that.
It is, yeah. J.G. Ballard? I think this is very off topic.
Well
if
done.
we're talking about the books of J.G. Ballard in our Neon Genesis Evangelion...
Yeah, before
anyway,
we got to that book, talking about Pokemon before that somehow.
Yeah. Do you know what? If they had done a 1990s a Western adaptation of Neon Genesis Evangelion, Empire of the Sun era Christian Bale would have been fucking perfect for Shinji.
That would have been great, yeah.
That's like dream casting right there.
And didn't that film come out? I'm going to put it out there. 94 is my guess. And if you can look it up. I was going to say I'll just put it on the screen when I edit, but Dom's looking it up. I'm going 94. I've got a little bit of a 93 maybe. No later than 94.
Oh, 87.
Fuck off.
That is much earlier than I thought it was. I did not think it was that.
He's much older than I thought he was.
Yeah. When was he born then? 74. He was born in 1974. Not Christian Bale is not 74. 1974. Well, he is older than I thought.
I guess that means he was only like 30 when
13.
Batman Begins.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense.
Still pretty young, actually, yeah.
Yeah. All right, Christian Bale. You're all right in my book, except for all those horrible things you've done.
But
you're in terms of your age, you're all right by me. Dreamcasting for Neon Genesis Evangelion in 1987. Christian Bale, he's in there.
I second it.
Yeah. So the giant Gyarados, the halo has turned into a Gyarados, and the Nerve have sent up 2 Avas to fight it. Because they still can't send up Shinji in Unit 1. Because ever since he said, "You're in my house now, bitch," in episode 19, nobody knows what to do with him. Because his Ava is kind of sentient, and he's like... Basically, they've maxed out their power, right? They've got to the point where Shinji and 01 are so good that anything could happen. Right? They don't know. Maybe they'll save the day, or maybe they'll end the world. Like they're so OP at this point. So they send up Rei to fight it, and they send up Asuka in Unit 02. Even though she can't synchronize with it, she's in a pit of despair, and everyone's like, I don't think we should send Asuka up there. And Commander Akari, in classic Commander Akari fashion.
It's like, send Unit 02 up. And they make all those the very same arguments. He's like, well, at the very least it'll be a decoy. Fuck, man.
I was
like Ray is his obviously his favourite, so you know anything that will take a bit of damage off of or attention off of Ray, so she can be the perfect soldier.
Absolutely.
That's well within his agenda.
I was talking to my good friend and comics collaborator Mark, who does a lot of the inking and works with me a lot on the comic stuff that I do. Check out our work on Instagram or my website at Dominic Archer Comics on Instagram or DominicArcherComics.com. And
nice plug.
Yeah, thank you. And Mark said, I was saying to him about how Gendo Ikari must be the worst father in his history. I had a similar conversation on another podcast that I guested on recently, which is Matt and Luke's Sci-Fi Sanctuary, two friends of mine who both live in Japan. They have a podcast about science fiction, and we spoke about Tenet. And at the end, I said, go and listen to my podcast, Daddy Issues. They said, who's the worst science fiction dad? And I said, Gendo Ikari, hands down, worst sci-fi dad. And so one of the things I was saying, me and Mark were saying, was I was saying about in the pandemic, how people have become cold. We've lacked the human interaction. And then this was I was drawing it into Neon Genesis Evangelion and making the point about the pandemic, how really the pandemic has proven Neon Genesis Evangelion correct. Right? We need that human interaction to survive. And I said, nobody's really cold in their heart, except maybe Gendo Ikari. And Mark came... No.
Except my co-host, Dave.
No, well, I mean, I don't want to fucking get into it right now, but... So Mark stepped in and said, Gendo isn't really either. He's just been hurt terribly by life, and now he wants to make sure that no one else has to suffer like he did, by any means necessary. And I said to Mark, no one has ever stepped in to defend Gendo Ikari before. He said, I'm a Gendo apologist, he said. But Gendo does exactly what is one of the great things about his character. He is always true to character, right? There's never a bit where you're like, that doesn't seem like him. Like, he sends Asuka up there to die, even though she can't move her fucking Ava. He sends her up there. Send her up there. If it hits her, it hits her.
Yeah, but then and Unit 02 pops out of the top of the lift, and Misato's like, engage, whatever. She's now Jean-Luc Picard, engage. And then, nice. But then she's struggling inside of her Ava, trying to get her to move. She's like, come on, please move. And nothing's happening. So Misato just goes, bad idea. Okay, bring her back down. So yeah, Akari's decoy doesn't last very long.
No. But this is when we see the angel do what it can really do. And this is, again, much like the previous episode, where we have the Hallelujah beam attack. This is a different kind of attack. It's building on what we've seen the angels do before, because if you remember in the episode where they have to fight the other Ava that's been taken over by the angel, one of the things that angel does is like meld itself inside the suits and kind of take them over. So they're trying to fight it, but it's also corrupting them. This one is just like 110%, jumps into you, pumps itself into your body, and starts just like fucking you from the inside.
Yeah, it's like roots. It's like root fucking you under your skin. Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. We see some weird stuff with Rey, where it's like going into her body, and then her suit, especially over her breasts, they highlight that quite a lot, which is
suddenly
pretty weird.
Suddenly their boobs look massive when they hadn't really been
and like vein. It's this vein-esque thing is like worming its way throughout. And it's terrifying. But this is a kind of another cool moment, because we jump into Rey's psychology and into her mind as the angel interacts with her, the same way as it was interacting with Asuka and Asuka's soul in the previous episode. So although the angel is different, we're seeing a similar thing play out with Rey as played out with Asuka in the previous episode. So what's this angel all about, Dave? What's this interaction all about?
This angel seems to be doing the become one with me thing with Rey. It says, become one with me, I'll share my heart with you. So I think it's trying to it seems like it's trying to achieve what Shinji and his Ava managed to achieve, which is this kind of pure symbiosis.
Yeah, and that was something we spoke about on previous episodes, was the recurrent imagery of Misato being naked, and then Rei was naked and Asuka was naked, and it was the become one with me, it'll feel really, really good. It was this kind of sex symbolism that isn't quite as prevalent at this point.
Not with Rei, no. Hers is more... Well, she goes... They talk about what loneliness is, and they compare... the Rei being one compared to the angel being one of many, or the other way around. I can't remember, because it's one of these things where two versions of Rei having a conversation. One is, kind of manifested itself as Rei as the angel, and the other is actually Rei, who's got that weird veiny thing that's going through her body, and so this weird sort of conversation. And Rei sort of explains what loneliness really is to this angel as it's trying to sort of understand what that means.
Mm.
So there isn't much, there's not much sexiness about this one.
No. And as Asuka starts descending and Rei is being rooted, which I think is an Australian phrase for fucked anyway, so that works. Gendo Ikari is like, fuck it, send Shinji and Unit 01 up. And as Shinji shoots up, Asuka's coming down, and she's like, they didn't fucking send Shinji out to help me when I was being hallelujah'd, when I was being Jeff Buckley'd in the previous episode. They didn't send...
That's very funny.
They didn't... Thank you. They didn't send Shinji up to help me, so she feels like she's being betrayed. They sent Rei to help her, but she's, she's losing. She's losing herself somewhat. So Shinji gets up there and does what he does best. Fights the fucking angel. But the angel, again, does its thing. It breaks his gun. It worms its way in. He's holding it off, but it's... all kinds of cool things happen here. Because it's already inside Rei. And...
one end is in Rei, and the other end goes off to fight Shinji. So it's kind of fighting on two fronts.
Yeah,
two ends.
but what it's going to do, basically, is form a literal connection between the two of them. Right? It's going to literally connect them psychically, to their soul, to all of this stuff. And the further you get through with this series, the less the angels seem like bad guys to me as well. At the beginning, they were dropping big nuclear attacks to try and destroy the city and get into the underground of the city because there was something there that they needed. But now what the angels are trying to do is form a connection to a human being, and the humans are always like, no, get away from me, you're defiling my mind.
It's a bit rapey, yeah, exactly. It's this is a very penetrative act that this angel is doing at either end of its wormy body. It's... I think I've said the word. It's penetrating them against their will.
Yeah. But I think that's a human way of looking at it. And if you're a giant floating angel, you probably don't have the same concept of
consent.
But you can't. It doesn't have a mouth. How does it? How does it communicate? The only way it can communicate is to psychically put itself into your body, right? And it's kind of
you're an angel apologist now.
No,
it's like in Independence Day where
I was thinking of Independence Day.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Not angel. They've got the alien on the operation table, but then it wakes up and goes all whippy, and then
it gets Data from Star Trek.
And smashes him against the glass. Maybe there can be peace. No peace.
No, imagine that. But they say maybe there can be peace, and the angels go, "All right. Let's be best friends." That's kind of how I imagine that playing out. That's what
I've been saying this whole time.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying this whole time, but you keep killing us. Stop killing us and let's have a rapey conversation.
The problem is Nerve don't have Bill Pullman, they've got Gendo Ikari.
Okay, so in our 1980s, 90s fan casting of the movie, we don't put Bill Pullman. as Gendo Ikari.
Well, I don't know. Bill Pullman's more recent stuff. I reckon he could probably play a very convincing and curt Gendo Ikari.
Yeah. All right.
He's not
What do you
all
think
heroic.
of Kevin Costner?
Past it.
Well, he is now, but
I don't
what do you
think.
think?
In the 90s, no, because the 90s Kevin Costner to me is fucking Dragonheart,
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves,
Robin Hood, and I've got one more.
You're right.
Waterworld.
Waterworld, yeah. Yeah, that's not Gendo Ikari, is it? No. He's
Sean
got long
Connery
hair.
would make a better Gendo Ikari.
Oh, that's a good shout. Yeah. Okay, 1980 Sean Connery. So he's already done the horribly racist Japanese thing in that final James Bond movie, where he somehow passes himself as a hairy-chested Japanese guy. And maybe it'd be a bit... No, yeah, that's good. That's good. I like that. All right. Like 60s Sean Connery, like James Bond era Sean Connery, would be like perfect for that, I think.
Ready for Gendo Ikari? I don't know, because he was too much of a hero. Like, he didn't have that edge. Like, we talked about the flashback episode.
Are you kidding?
Where
Remember when he shoots the guy with the harpoon and is like, I think he got the point? That's some cold shit.
Yeah, but it's tongue-in-cheek, it's goofy, it's Mickey Mouse shit. Like, he's not...
that's Roger
Moore. Gendo Ikari, when you see him when he's young, he's got these big, creepy eyes that immediately signify... There's,
what about
darkness.
Timothy Dalton? I'm not just Bond fan casting, but you know how Timothy Dalton tends to play villains now, and he does quite a convincing villain.
But again, he's a charming villain. He's not a deadpan, mean villain.
All right, we'll come back to it. It's a tough one to cast because the character is so strong of Gendo Ikari, which is why we did this whole fucking series, was because of the strength of Gendo Ikari. Yeah, you got to be very particular with it. All right, okay. So the angel, remember when we were talking about what happens in this episode? The angel basically fucks Rei and Shinji at the same time.
Double-ended.
Yeah. And we get a moment where the angel, because it's been connected to Rei, manifests a version of her out of the end towards Shinji, and it basically tries to embrace him.
Is that before or after Rei gets his blade out and stabs the wormy critter and it screams like a human woman scream?
No, Shinji gets his knife. Yeah,
creepy.
Shinji gets his knife and stabs it. Yeah, but again, because it's connected to Rei, it's like, is Rei feeling the stab as well? Because she feels what happens to the Ava. So if he stabs the angel and the angel is connected to her and the Ava, does he feel it? Does she feel it as well?
Oh, I didn't get the impression that she does, but then it's interesting that the angel's reaction is to take the form of Rei to kind of placate Shinji and be like, don't stab me anymore, please.
Yeah, but when he stabs it, like his hand starts to bubble up with faces as well, because his hand is connected to the angel, and so the angel screams, and then like these little small creepy faces manifest. They're like, "You're hurting me, Shinji! Don't hurt me!" Shinji's like, "Oh my god, this is fucking weird," and then the Rei is born out of it, and it's like a pure white with these black eyes and red irises of this angelic form of Rei, which again is something we'll come back to when we get to the end of Evangelion movie. Is this again this kind of imagery here, where it's like it's born out, and Rei says, like, is this what I want? Do I want to be one with Shinji? I think she says.
She does.
Yeah. And so the angel starts like embracing and wrapping itself around him. But then she says no. And with this no, again, because I'm not Japanese, I don't know if this no is saying, I don't want to be one with Shinji, or if it's saying, no, you're about to kill Shinji, I won't let you kill Shinji. Like that. It's like no! Or is it, do I want to be with him? No.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't feel like she was answering her question. I felt it was more a reaction to what was happening to Shinji, and that she wasn't going to allow Shinji to be hurt by this thing. But if which anything is kind of an answer answering her question as yes. Like, how could she be, if she does want to be with him, she can't if he's dead. But then her solution is one that results in her also not being able to be with him to a degree. And I'm doing my whole like vague, not giving away what happens thing, even though we're talking about it right now.
Well, what happens, Dave?
She blows up.
She takes the angel back inside herself, and it fills her like a womb. Like her womb is expanding.
Yes, it gets impregnated. Eva gets almost impregnated with this angel, and it expands into this big bulbous Cronenbergian kind of visage. And then inside the Eva plug, she flips open the self-destruct, and she fucking takes her and the angel out with it. And with a very very strong symbolism of right as she's about to implode/explode, the Ava completely changes form to be a angelic glowing ray, like a Evangelion sized ray, but all in glowing white energy with a literal halo above its head. And then boom.
Yeah. I think the last thing she sees is a flash of Gendo. Like she sees a vision of Gendo come before her, and then she like reaches out to touch him. The Evangelion kind of gets off the ground as if reaching up towards something, and then that's when she turns all white and glowy, and then boom. It's a hell of a moment, and this sacrifice takes out the entire city. Right, like Tokyo 3, they say is a fortress city where they have the city, but then when they get attacked by an angel, the city like descends underground with all the people. So the people are safe, but the explosion is again the constant repetition of the nuclear bomb. Wipes out everything above ground and bursts the border with the lake. The lake comes through and fills this nuclear crater, like doubling the size of the lake, basically. So now there's a whole new lake full of water and like rubble rising out of it. And like Tokyo 3 is gone. Right?
Obviously Shinji and Unit 1, they are unharmed by it somehow.
Yeah, because he's got his AT field. Yeah. So they say then the thing comes up saying Ray 3, and we're here.
Yeah, like that's halfway. That's only the halfway point of the episode.
Yeah, and we've been talking about it for like an hour.
I know.
And we're only halfway through the episode, which is why we have to break this stuff down. But the beginning of the next half of the episode is really interesting because it's going back to those characters based on the assumption that the Ray is dead, right? And Seal are like, how did they die, right? Or how did this happen? And then Ritsuko is looking at a picture of her mother, again, because as we know, Ritsuko's mother died after she choked baby Ray to death and then killed herself. So there's a strong correlation between Ritsuko and Ray that's really grown as the series gone on. But then we get our recurrent imagery back to Shinji and his Walkman. Dave.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I thought was a really strong moment, because we've seen in previous episodes where Shinji deals with his depression by sitting there and listening to the same tracks on his Walkman again and again and again. And this is the first time we've cut to the Walkman and it's playing, but he doesn't have his headphones in. He's just left them there.
Yeah, he just sat in bed alone in complete silence.
Yeah. And
except for, like you say, like the tinny, quiet sound of headphones playing music when they're not in anyone's ears.
Yeah, and again we get this human interaction moment where Masato comes in to be like, Ray's gone. There's nothing I can do for you but this, and she puts her hand on his hand, so basically to hold his hand and support him, and he says, "Don't do that, Masato," and turns away from her.
He recoils powerfully. But it's interesting that this episode is called Tears, because we kind of missed it a little bit, but right before Ray sacrifices herself and she's having that one-to-one with the angel in her psyche, she starts to cry and she feels tears landing on her legs and on her seat, and she's like, are these tears? And I don't think I remember seeing her cry once this whole series. And then when Shinji is there, like you said, not listening to music, but his Walkman is there and he's alone, and Masato comes in, Shinji says the tears just won't come. Like I know that I'm sad, but the tears won't come.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a really, really strong connection. And with Rey especially, because I think it's in the Rey 2 episode earlier in the series that we said that's Rey's first smile. The first time she ever smiles is in that episode. And then the first time she cries is in the episode Tears. So in Rey 2 she smiles, in Rey 3 she cries. Again, kind of highlighting that connection with her. But I felt a very strong connection to Shinji in that moment, because I also, when people or like Blue, my dog, died in just 2 days before Christmas, and everyone was crying about it in the house, and obviously because I've been our dog for 11 years, and everyone cried, and I just could not cry. Again, I had that same thing as Shinji, right? I know that I'm sad, I'm really sad, but I just can't cry. And I know that I should. I know the appropriate response is to cry, but I can't. And when other people I know have died, I'm very lucky that my grandfather did, and I think when my grandfather died, I'm not lucky that my grandfather died. I mean, I'm lucky that, but by this point, lots of people's of grandparents have passed away, but my grandfather is one of the, I have, as we said on previous episodes, I have many grandparents, and only one of them has died so far. And it's that same thing again when someone passes away. I can't muster that appropriate response, and it's not that I'm not sad, it's that whatever my way of dealing with this is and processing it, it's not just sitting there and crying yet. Maybe it's something that takes time and that happens over time, but
well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you remember, but a couple of years ago, our family dog Ted died, and I had exactly the same scenario. My mum was crying and everyone's sad, and it happened at Christmas, but I didn't have any tears, and I think at the time I chalked it up to the fact that he was ill for a long time, and it was inevitable, and if anything, we kept him around longer than maybe we should have done for his own comfort and well-being. And it wasn't until I think you and I spoke about it. Oh, it was on the never to be aired Awful Therapy podcast, where we talked about loss, and that was the first time I cried about Ted dying and it had been 2 years since it had happened. So like you said, maybe it hasn't hit you yet, but it still could.
Do you know what? This is one of those things that I'll bring it up because we're having this particular conversation. But we did the awful commentary, the awful therapy podcast, and it was not awful. It was really good, and we did a few episodes. And the problem was it was kind of too good, and we decided maybe it's not. Maybe we don't want people being able to listen to this stuff.
Yeah, if it was very helpful, I felt much better for doing it. But then it was in listening back and editing that. Yeah, we thought maybe this isn't really for mass
for audiences.
Consumption. Yes, but it was therapeutic for us, or for me at least.
Yeah, but I sent you the comic yesterday. I had a dream, and I'm actually going to bring up, because it's Neon Genesis Evangelion. The whole thing's fucking trippy and dreamy, so whatever. It's all very David Lynch. David Lynch talking about
I have a dream speech.
Yes, I have a dream where I'm lonely. Basically, no, because as I mentioned in this episode, I had a really strong, powerful relationship that I thought was going to be the relationship for the rest of my life. I was like, this is the one. And then coronavirus came, and then it failed. And that has been a really big problem for me to deal with, is that I haven't been able to deal with the fact that the relationship I thought was going to be the defining relationship in my life was cut short because this pandemic happened. And, it's difficult. It was difficult, Every couple I know, I think, other than you and Laura, basically have broken up during the pandemic. You either have to be married, or you and Laura, it seems, to have survived this thing somehow. So congratulations to you, because I don't know how you did it. But I had a dream 2 days ago. Or was it yesterday? Whenever it was. And the dream was, in the dream, I had a wife. And I had just been married to this woman. It wasn't my ex-girlfriend. It was just a dream person.
Anonymous, faceless person.
Yeah. But we just gotten married. And the wedding was beautiful. And she was beautiful. And we went home, and when we went home, there was like a puppy waiting for us. It was like a golden retriever puppy, but because it was a puppy, it wasn't like hair. It wasn't like really hairy. It was just more like fluffy. It was just like pure fluff, and it was just like joyous and bouncy. And then we had a baby, and this whole thing culminated with my wife saying, "These might be the happiest days of our lives." Right, like we've got the baby, we've just been married, the puppy's there. It was bliss. It was just so happy. And then I fucking woke up. Into this dog shit world, and I hated it. And I woke up, and over the course of breaking up from the relationship, I've been emotional, and I've like maybe cried in frustration and in mourning, but I've never had a moment where I like sit there and just bawl, right? Where I just like get it all out. In anger I've done it. I've hit the wall and like all kinds of other shit. But I've never had a moment where I actually cry. And I woke up from this fucking dream, this dream where I was happy, and I cried for like 10 minutes. It was crazy. Like the loss to me of this fictional wife that existed in my subconscious, and my fictional subconscious child, and my subconscious dog, was like the biggest loss that I have had in forever, in like so long. And I sat up and I made a comic of it immediately, because I sat up to make the comic at 7:30 in the morning, because I thought, if I don't make it now throughout the course of this day, I'm going to lose them. And I made the comic specifically to remember these people who existed in my subconscious, because they made me happy in a way that no one else has ever done. And it's like... oh, god damn it. What I would give anything to go back into that dream.
I've had dreams like that too, where you just...
Yeah.
You want to be able to step back in, like a save point, and go,
yeah,
here's where I was, and next time I sleep, I'd like to resume from that point, please.
Yeah, and sometimes I have a dream where I'm Batman, and then I wake up and I was like, oh, that was fucking cool. I want to be Batman. Put me back in the dream. But this one was like, that's the life that I want, right? I was happy there. Why did I have to wake up into this coronavirus-infected prison that is the United Kingdom? So, man. But I think when we get to further episodes of the later episodes of Neon Genesis, is the dreamlike aspect of it increases, and as people's subconscious starts to come to the fore, they are able to confront their pain and their trauma and move past the tears that they are holding back, and actually come to peace and happiness within themselves. It's kind of like the aim. But at the moment, Shinji is still lying on his bed, rejecting Masato, rejecting the human interaction he needs to grieve. Even Pen Pen is lying on the floor and rejecting human connection. And Masato realizes, she's just looking for some form of connection. It doesn't matter who it is.
I was going to say that, right, however many hours ago we started talking about this, today, I mean, you said about how this show is so human, in that you watch these characters don't do the things that will heal the situation or to heal their relationships, because they can't step out of themselves in order to take positive steps. And I was going to say that it occurs in this episode where someone does reach out and try to have a human connection in a time of grief and be that kind of rock for somebody, which is what Masato does for Shinji. And Shinji, like you said, rejects it. Mm-hmm. And then when Masato leaves the room, she sees Pen Pen on the floor and was like, "Hey, Pen Pen, come here." And Pen Pen's like looks up at her and he's like, "Nah, I'm happy lying on the floor doing nothing." And Masato even says very overtly to herself, "Oh, I guess it's anyone will do, I suppose. Then I guess I just needed some company. I'm just a bit lonely."
Yeah, but because she just lost the love of her life. Right, so she's grieving his loss and Ray's loss. She's desperate for someone, because in the previous episode, Misato was crying, and Shinji didn't go to her and went to his bed and like covered his head. Right, said, "I'm just a child," or something like that.
Yeah, and something as well. This the very beginning of this episode we spoke about with Misato listening again to that voicemail from Kaji.
Yeah.
It also cuts to innumerable cans of coffee drink. So, and as you said, these episodes seem like they come straight after the other, like the same day or the next day. I would believe that she hasn't slept since she first heard that voicemail from Kaji. She hasn't gone to sleep.
No, because what happens next after the Shinji scene and the pen, she says, "Oh, I'm looking for someone else." We cut back to the coffee cups because the phone rings and she answers the phone and they're saying, "It's Rei. She's alive." And she calls Shinji. It's like, Shinji. "Oh my shit, Shinji. Oh my shit, Shinji." She says. And they rush to the hospital because Rei is alive, but she's heavily wounded. And she's like covered in bandages. And Shinji's like, Anami, like that, and runs up. But what he doesn't do is go anywhere near her.
Yeah.
He runs, and then she sits on a bench, and he stands like 10 meters away.
Exaggeration. It's like 3 or 4. I'm nitpicking, but it's not like.
All right, let's say
5
meters. 5 meters.
Yeah,
well,
like,
she's on like a 10-seat sofa or something, and she's sat like on the 4th seat. Then there's like a
bunch of
bin
ones.
for cigarettes.
Yeah,
and then like he stood on the wall away from her. So it's a sizable difference.
They're
on either side of the frame within the shot.
Yeah. I'll take your point there. Yeah, and that's then. Shinji says he's so happy that she's alive, and he thanks her for saving his life. And Rei says, "What? So you from the angel back then, thanks for saving me." And she's like, "Oh, did I? Okay, I guess I must have done." And this is the line. Go on. No, I was going to say this is the line of dialogue that I mentioned earlier that gives the whole lot away, but probably of no surprise to anyone. Where she says, "Oh, I guess I'm probably the third one," and then boom, hard cut to the next scene, which maybe that was meant to be the what the fuck moment, but I was kind of like, yeah, cool, makes sense.
This again goes back to what and I know you're getting tired of the phrase, but this is
you're going to say narrative maths.
I'm going to say narrative maths. Because this is not the first time that the idea of Rei not being the original Rei has come up, right? It has been like in dialogue before, like literally when Ritsuko's mum chokes the first Rei to death, she says to the first Rei as she kills her, "It doesn't matter if you die because there will be another." As she chokes her to death.
And she says the same thing about herself, that they'll replace me too. And which is true because her daughter works there and who does inherit her position.
Yeah. So, and there's countless times before that as well that little things have been built up to this. Yeah, this idea that Rei is not just a regular person in the way that everybody else is. Yeah.
Yeah, and as we intimated briefly earlier, this episode is called Rei 3. For the reason that it is the third episode that focuses on Rei, but also because that could be her like royal title.
Yeah,
Rei the Third.
She is Rei the Third.
Yeah.
Your Highness, Rei the Third.
But I suppose what's interesting is that the first Rei was a little girl, and then the second and third Reis have been teenage age.
Yeah, well, the second Rei obviously must have aged from being a little girl for like 10 years until she was a teenager. So Rei 2 who sacrificed herself at the beginning had actually lived her life and developed and smiled and cried. And as we see later on, Rei 2 had developed a soul that Rei 3 doesn't have. Rei 2 sacrifices herself in order to save Shinji, having just asked, "Do I want to be one with Shinji?" And then the next Rei won't even go near him. Right, and it's a big thing. So she goes back to the Rei apartment and she sees Commander Akari's cracked glasses. The pride of Rei's life to such an extent that when Shinji wore them before, Rei slapped him basically in the apartment the first time. Oh no, he was wearing them, and then she said, "Take those off," in the only time she's ever been angry.
Yeah, she tried to take them off of him, and they fumble.
They fell. Yeah, they fell on the floor. Yeah. But this time, Rei picks up the glasses and like grips them in her hands as if to shatter them. And she cries. Like we see Rei, and she says, "I feel like this should be the first time I've cried, but I think I've seen it before."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it took Rei 2 all of that time to cry, and then Rei 3 has cried in basically her first day of life.
Yeah. Whew. So Seal comes back. What's another song by Seal that we can reference for this?
There's one called Killer, and I have a Seal album, his self-titled album from, I want to say, 1991. I still have that CD somewhere, and I can't remember any more of the songs. But there's one called Killer. I'll throw it in. I'll throw it in the episode.
I said, when you edit this podcast, can you put in, every time we mention Seal, can you put in a little kick for
okay.
us?
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
It's the loneliness that's a killer.
So Seal have demanded that somebody fucking account for all the crazy shit that has happened, right? The Spear of Longinus, which was necessary to prevent the apocalypse, is now in orbit of the moon. And Rei is, Unit 00 has exploded and destroyed Tokyo 3, and Rei, the pilot, is somehow alive. And Seal are like, dun 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 dun, get that bitch in front of us. And Akari's like, no, I'm not. I'm going to send Ritsuko to go and talk to you. He's like, Rei is too traumatized. The doctor can come and explain.
Yeah, I'll send a proxy in my place just to keep them busy.
Yeah, and it is not pretty what they do to her, basically.
No, and it felt a little bit sexist that when Ritsuko is put in front of Seal, she's naked, and to humiliate her and to try and get kind of torturing her to get her to talk.
Yeah.
Whereas when they had Fuyutsuki in the same position, he was just tied to a chair, fully clothed. It should be pointed out.
Also, when they talked to Misato in previous episode, because Misato stepped in for Shinji, I think, in an earlier episode to talk to Seal, but Misato was fully dressed. So as you're saying, this is a point of humiliation. I think that the Seal even say, how did he not get the message when we kidnapped his deputy commander, right? And then we returned him unharmed. Like, is this motherfucker dense or what? And as we know, he's not dense. He's just not going to bend, right? Ikari does not bend and he's uncompromising. As Mark said, he'll do by whatever means necessary. And so Seal bring in Ryutsuki, like probably the most intelligent scientist in the world, vital to this entire project, and then strip her naked and to humiliate and berate her in a direct attack on Ikari, basically. To be like, you're going to tell us everything, and then you're going to tell your boss what we did to you, and then he's going to learn to get back in line.
Yeah, their methods are so ineffectual. Like, I don't
He's
understand.
got they're fucking idiots. Yeah.
I don't get it at all. I don't know what they're really trying to achieve.
Just kill him and put Misato in charge.
Yeah, they could
be
do
fine.
that easily. They presumably killed Kaji, right?
Yeah. But it's a really important scene because Ritsuko doesn't break, right? They want to break her and she doesn't. And maybe she tells them what they need to know, but they want her to be in like floods of tears that she's been humiliated, but she doesn't. She's puts up those walls. Yeah, which is like who she is, who we've always seen. Like, this is who she's always been. But she immediately returns. She returns back to Nerve and calls Shinji. It's like, Shinji, you're not currently being tracked. Come and meet me. And Shinji's like, why does the doctor want to meet me? Like that. And Misato is finally she stopped listening to the phone, and she's like, I'm gonna look at the information that you gave me, that her boyfriend gave her. I'm not gonna miss you. I'm gonna continue the task that you set, which is to uncover the truth.
Because Kaji's message says repeatedly that the truth is with you. Like he's passing on what he was trying to uncover to her. It's her mandate.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happens? What's the finale of this episode? Walk us through it, Dave.
Ritsuko is at a big secretive-looking door with a swipey card, and she tries to get into this chamber. It doesn't let her in. Her access has been revoked, or whatever. But that's where she wants to get into with Shinji. Shinji's there, but Misato has figured stuff out, or she's followed them, or whatever, and she puts a gun into Ritsuko's back, and is pissed. Like, she thinks Ritsuko's a part of just as much of a part of Nerve as Akari is, and is also hiding the truth. But
which is true.
Which is true.
That
yeah.
is,
and
yeah.
But then Ritsuko has been accosted and abducted, and maybe her alignment has shifted slightly.
Yeah.
So she's like, I understand what you're doing, but why don't you just all of you come in, and I got to show you some stuff. So they go into the secretive door, this chamber, and we enter in what looks like kind of like a very like a sciencey lab kind of place, like a dingy looking lab that looks an awful lot like Rei's apartment. And that's exactly what Shinji says, like, hey, this looks like Rei's apartment, and Ritsuko's like, that's because it is. This is where Rei is born, and I say is instead of was because it's happened multiple times, I presume, and her apartment looks that way to kind of ease that transition and to make her know where home is, I suppose, kind of thing. And we see some things scattered around the lab that have always caught my eye in Rei's apartment, and I wondered, why the fuck is there a surgical tray and a surgical beaker and some like surgical scissors and stuff just lying around Rei's apartment? It's because those are the kind of things that are in this lab, and that's all very intentional. So that's one big revelation for for Misato and for Shinji. And then she's like, that's nothing. This is the warm-up pack. This is the starter course, mate. Follow me this way. And they go into a whole other chamber, which we as the audience have seen before, which is this weird like brain kind of shaped machine with almost like a spinal cord coming out the bottom of it.
Before we get to that, we're taken to an Ava graveyard.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, kind of like the elephant graveyard from the Lion King. But full of the bones of dead Avas.
All the failed Avas, and of course, typically the trench, the grave that all of these skeletal Evangelions are thrown into is in the shape of a crucifix.
Yeah, and we've seen, again, this is a place that we've seen before, and as Ritsuko says, I think, she's like, this is where your mother died, Shinji. She says,
this is
where she was lost. Where she disappeared.
Vanished, And she's like, you will remember that, won't you? You were there. And I get the impression that he doesn't really remember that properly. Yeah.
But we've seen it from his perspective a number of times.
Yeah, we've seen it. So, sorry, that is in between the two rooms. So that's the entree. And then we're getting into the juicy dessert to follow, which is this weird chamber we've seen before with a sort of a status tube in the middle of it that's attached to this big brain and spine looking thing, where we've seen Rei in before, sort of floating.
Yeah, and we know that it's been mentioned before that this is where they produce the dummy plugs, which are like the replacement Ava pilots that was used to take the control of Unit 01 away from Shinji.
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely
an AI massacre his friend. Yeah.
So if they need to take control away from one of the kids and make it run on autopilot, essentially, they've made these dummy plugs in this tube. And we've seen Rei in it before, floating around, and Akari's always been there, looking up at her, and they talk to each other. The tube.
Yeah, she said, "Let's get some lunch" in a previous episode.
Yeah, hop out and let's go get a hot dog or something. The tube is empty at this point, and Ritsuko goes on to explain this is where we made the dummy plugs. And then she flicks a switch on a little handheld device she's got, and the rest of the room illuminates. And what they're surrounded with by, almost in all of the walls of this circular chamber, are an aquarium full of Rei clones, hundreds of them. And they're all like very blank faced with like a smile, like a vacant expression kind of thing, with a slight smile.
It's haunting.
It's creepy as
sure.
heck, yeah. And it's really interesting that, I don't know if it is interesting actually, I threw that out there without thinking about it. It was noticeable that this is the first time we've seen naked bodies before, but they've never really been, what's the word? Biologically kind of accurate in terms of, nipples. I'm going to say nipples.
Yeah, nipples. You're right. We've almost never had nipples before.
We've seen body shapes of women, and Shinji too. But a lot of the time we see these kind of imaginary scenes in Shinji's head, and these female characters are naked, but they're Barbie and Ken dolls. They're very smooth. There's no bits. But then all of these Rey clones in this enormous tank, they have nipples, which is noticeable. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I think you're right, because the previous times where we have seen people naked, it has always been in a vision presented by an Ava or an angel, where the humanity, there's no humanity to them, right? Because they're not human. They're being presented to you by an angel or by an Ava. And so it's like a spiritual, soulful, it's sexual, but it's like a connection to your soul, not to your body. Whereas this time, it's
pure,
like... Yeah, it's like, this is an actual... The body of an actual person. Yeah. Right? And, like, but the difference is, this is the body of an actual person, but they have no soul. And they're there vacant, and then Shinji says, like, oh my god, it's Rey. And all of them go, whoosh, and look at him with, like... it's creepy. It's like
horror
movie,
accuracy,
horror movie stuff.
Spooky,
yeah. But they smile, but as you're saying, it's that vacant, empty. And I think Ritsuko says these are spare parts for Rey, right? Like say, like Rey loses her kidneys. This is where we get the new kidneys from. It's that kind of, it's like an organ farm.
It's that
basically.
film The Island with Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson. Yeah. Cloned body parts.
Yeah, but it's a really important moment because it leads on to what the Avas are, to descriptions of what the Avas are, to what this whole thing is about. And Ritsuko says, mankind found God. And after finding God, they tried to control God. And I think that's what they found in Japan, is the point. Although it says they were punished for trying to control God, which was like the second impact. So maybe it's supposed to be what happened in Antarctica. But then they lost their God and were just left with what they have. So they took what they had from Adam and then made humans in the image of Adam. And the humans that they make are the Avas, right? So they have taken Adam's DNA and, they've taken the angel from Adam and then made their own humans using that, which are the Avas. And we know what they are. And now we've seen their graveyard, right? We've seen thousands of these corpses just littered. And Ritsuko's like, yeah, they're human. Well, the Avas are human, and there's all of their dead bodies, and also we control them and you pilot them. And also, here's a giant tank full of floating dead bodies. Well, not dead bodies, but soulless bodies. And they say, I think Ritsuko says, the Avas, like these Rey clones, the Avas have no souls. We create these angel human bodies, but there's no souls in them, so we put souls in them. And the souls that they put in them are like Shinji's mum. And Asuka's mum, right? Like the souls. That's why they are the only people who can pilot those Avas, because the souls of their mothers are in them.
So what about Unit 00? Who's in that?
Well, Rey is in both, I think, right?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, like, if they need to put a soul into the Avas for them to work, is that just not Shinji and his soul and Asuka and her soul are the things that are required in order for the Avas to work?
I think the point of it is that the Avas are humans in the form of angels, right? They are human bodies that have been infused with angel DNA and they become these giant monsters. But Rei is an angel in the form of a human, and the form of the body is a clone of Shinji's mum. So Shinji is piloting the soul of his mum in an angel, and Rei is the body of his mum with like the soul of an angel in it, and they are these kind of counterpoints. So, which is, I think, why Rei is able to pilot Unit 01, because it's his mum in both forms, kind of correlated. And Unit 01, I think, is a similar thing, where it's like they are both kind of each other's soul in that way. But they're all created, they're all produced in a factory, and even their souls are like taken from somebody else and put in there. So it gets really heavy, and they say the only thing that they could create with the soul, or the only one of these they could create with the soul, was Rei. And all of these things here they are dummies, right? They are dolls. This is tying us back to Asuka and Asuka's fury that Rei is just a doll. Well, guess what, Asuka? You were fucking right, because here's a giant room of them, right? And it's like, as we've said before, they don't do this shit by accident. Right, there's a reason Asuka called her a doll for, the whole series, and it's because she literally is.
Yeah.
And it
gets
real.
Yeah, it does get real heavy. I can bring us out of the heaviness just for a moment by asking, what is the Chamber of Guff, and why is it empty? Because there was one mention of the Chamber of Guff in the beginning of Nerve episode. The Fuyutsuki flashback episode, and in this one, Ritsuko says the chamber of Guff is empty, which is how I feel after I've come off the toilet. So I wondered if you could explain to me what that is and allow me to keep saying Guff over and over again, because I'm a child and I find that really funny.
From what I can tell, Guff is like another. It's a chamber that's up the wazoo. It's a chamber full of wazoo. I think it's a Hebrew phrase that has something to do with the soul, essentially. Like, the Chamber of Guff is like a chamber of souls.
Okay.
Basically. Stop laughing at the word guff. This is real serious. If the Chamber of Guff is empty, then there's no soul inside the body, Dave.
So Ritsuko's saying that they know that all these Rei dolls are empty because the Chamber of Guff is vacant.
Guff. Yes, exactly.
Brilliant.
She's got no guff.
She's got no guff.
That's another t-shirt. Get that t-shirt number 2. She's got no guff. Daddy issues. She's got no guff.
Oh, okay. What happens after guff?
I don't know. I'm gonna make that t-shirt though. Well, what does happen? What does Ritsuko do after she announces to the world that Rei has no guff? She
basically like flicks the kill switch and destroys all of the Rei clones in the aquarium, the spooky ass aquarium.
Yeah, and she breaks down, right?
Yeah.
And, Misato's like, "What have you done? Do you know what you've done?" And I think
she just says, "I've destroyed property." Like she's just completely negates any more greater value or soul value, or you could call it, on these vessels because they're guffless. And she's like, all I've done is destroy property. And then she does break down and speaks on her relationship with Akari and why did she ever think that he would be any different, or did she think she was going to change? And I'm a fool, just like mother, like daughter.
What are we learning in this moment that we didn't know before?
That Ritsuko and Akari are, at the very least, boning.
They're guffing. They're guffing all over each other.
It's a bit of a fetishistic thing, but I get the impression that they're more just having cold, emotionless intercourse, at which point Akari just rolls over and then leaves.
See, I think that's definitely how Akari approaches it. But I think I can imagine that Akari is using that emotional connection as a way to control her in the same way that he did with her mother.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's kind of, that was his way of like, having that relationship with them allowed him some form of control over them. And by throwing her naked and humiliated in front of Seal, dun, 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 it has caused her to realize that
he doesn't care. Like he's she's just another one of his pawns that he'll play in order to further his agenda.
And the only thing that he does care about ultimately is Rey, who is an empty, soulless vessel. So she kills all the Reys, except for Rey 3, who is in tears
in her sterile, murky apartment.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us to the end of the episode, right?
Yeah, I think Ritsuko falls to her knees and breaks down, and Misato has something to say, I'm sure. I can't remember what it is, but she's there.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Shinji doesn't really have an awful lot of involvement in that, other than just being a bit shocked. I don't think remember if he says much, but he's just witnessing all of this and probably just... I don't know how his psyche is held together throughout all of this. Like he's never going to be a normal person.
No, you know what? I've been sending you a lot of... I think I'm probably mentioned this in the previous episode as well. But I've been sending you a lot of Evangelion memes recently because I've been looking at them and they amuse me. And one of the ones I saw was like... everyone is constantly calling Shinji weak and calling Shinji a pussy. And they're always like, oh, grow up, Shinji. Oh, take control. Oh, you're so pathetic, Shinji. Idiot Shinji. And then... what you look at Shinji, and what he's done is he's appeared at his father's request, having never piloted an Ava before, never even knowing what one is, and then consistently, out of like 15 angels, Shinji single-handedly defeated about 13 of them, right? Like everyone else failed, and Shinji consistently beat them on his own. Never wanting to. He's emotionally broken down and then pulls himself back together to complete the mission. He saved the world like 100 times. And everyone's like, oh, Shinji, you're so pathetic. Oh, Shinji, you idiot. And you're right, how does he hold himself together? It is a miracle that this boy is able to do what he does. Yeah, and everyone calls him pathetic.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's completely unvalued by his father, who... couldn't be further detached from him emotionally. He lost his mum in a tragic way when he was a kid. He's constantly belittled by someone he's forced to cohabit with, who he has all kinds of conflicting sexual and emotional feelings about. He's constantly facing life and death situations where he has to save the world over and over again. He witnesses a whole bunch of spooky-ass clones of someone he may or may not be in love with just disintegrate in front of him. Yeah, he's a fucking legend, mate.
He is. Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Which is when we first...
What have you realised? Do it.
This is not narrative math. This is just... When we first started watching these episodes, you were like, don't ever skip the intro sequence because the lyrics are really important and one day I'm going to call you up on them. And I haven't really paid much attention to them in the last 10 episodes or so because I have skipped them because it goes on for a while. But then the very first line, isn't it? Become legend, young man or young boy or something. He is. He does. And we've still got 3 more episodes. 4. I don't know. Fucking 1,000 more episodes to go before he does become legend.
No, we've only got 3. We've got 3 more to go. But seriously... this has been an hour and 40 minutes. We can't do episode 24 as well.
No, of course we're not. No, I mean, we've been recording for an hour and 40 minutes. I think the episode will be a bit shorter than that. But there's no way we can double up and do the next one.
No. All right then. Next episode. I don't want to promise we're going to do more than one.
No, I think we should just aim to do 1 episode per episode, and then if we get to a point where we're like, hey, why don't we just go into the next episode? Maybe we can.
Then we're at a perfect point to end. Next episode 24, The Last Cometh It's only building up. Maybe then our next conversation about a 20-minute cartoon is going to be 3 hours long. So tune in for that. And we will see how many times could we have rewatched this episode we've spoken about by the time let's just tune in next time, for God's sake. Yeah.
Yeah, for God's sake, just go. But come back.